We are live once again with Coffee with Humans with my new friend Terry. Terry, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Thank you, Jason. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
It's such a good time and it's such a good day. And I am curious, why did you choose to click the button to have coffee with me?
You know, it's funny. When I was growing up, there was a reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times by the name of Irv Kupcinet. And I always tell our daughter, we have a conversation. We don't do that anymore. We text each other. We FaceTime each other. We do all kinds of things, but we don't sit around and have a conversation. And I always kind of kid my daughter, have a conversation. The lively art of conversation with Irv Kupcinet. And when I saw your podcast, for some reason that popped into my head, and I thought, you know what, I'd like to be on this guy's podcast and see if we can make that happen.
Well, that's great. So for our new viewers and listeners, Coffee with Humans is a live stream talk show where I meet my guests about 8 minutes before we go live, and then we talk for 45 minutes or so about anything. Now, when you signed up, you did give me a little bit of background, so didn't go into this totally blind, but we can go anywhere with this conversation. And I asked you, I put you on the spot. I said, hey, if I was going to name this chat today, what would you name it? And you said, finding your uncommon and extraordinary purpose. And you said it so quickly. I was like, either you always know that off the top of your head, or you said you just kind of rolled with that. It just kind of spilled out of your soul, it seemed. Walk me through how that came about.
Well, I guess finding your uncommon and extraordinary purpose. I don't want to come out here and hawk stuff, so I'm not going to do that. But I do have a book that kind of has that title in it. But I think it's important. I think so many people go through their lives and they never find their purpose. They never find the reason that they were put on the face of the earth. And so I've been battling cancer for the last 9 years. So going on podcasts has kind of been my purpose in doing that is to help people find and live their uncommon and extraordinary purpose. So that's kind of where that came from and how I got there.
That's really interesting. You started and said, I've been battling cancer for 9 years, and now you're kind of on this mission to help people find their purpose. And it's interesting to me, and it sounds like you might agree with this, that it is through pain and suffering that we find purpose.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been asked, if you could get rid of this cancer. And this cancer has seen me be on a drug that gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week for almost 5 years, and not be a cure for my cancer, just to kind of hold it off, to kind of hold it at bay. It's seen me have my left foot amputated in 2018. It's seen me have my left leg amputated in 2020 during the pandemic. And people ask, would you get rid of all? No. I mean, cancer doesn't define me. It's kind of, back in the 90s, there was a basketball coach from North Carolina State by the name of Jim Valvano. And he won an award at the ESPYs, the ESPN Sports Awards. And he had a great speech. And he was dying of cancer at the time. And he talked about how cancer can take all my physical faculties, but it can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. Back in the 90s, I didn't understand that. Today, I understand that. I wouldn't trade cancer. I don't like it. It sucks, all that kind of fun stuff, but it's made me a better person.
It's so eye-opening, and maybe ear-opening, and that sort of statement cuts to the soul. That you wouldn't trade cancer because of who it's made you, who it's allowed you to be. It's given you the opportunity, really, and yet we as people, certainly, I'll speak for myself, spend so much time trying to avoid pain and suffering, and yet it does seem to be the gateway to a greater purpose, and not only a greater purpose, but an extraordinary strength that cannot. It seems that extraordinary strength is not developed any place else other than in the fire of pain and suffering.
And I think we're all going to experience pain in our lives. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, on the other hand, that's optional. That's what you do with that pain. Do you use that pain to make you a stronger, a tougher, a more determined individual? or do you wallow in it and want people to feel
Mm.
sorry for you and, and feel sorry for yourself? I guess I want your audience to understand there is no S on my chest. I do not wear a cape and fly around with magical powers. I have bad days just like everybody else,
Right.
but I just don't let myself stay in those bad times. So, it's all kind of what you do with pain. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. I love that because it really, I think it, in a very short kind of little quote, and it's not mine. It's
Right.
a old Japanese quote. But I just love it because it's what you do with that pain that makes you the individual that you are.
Yeah, it's the contrast that what I think we can see, because we can see the extremes, right? And so if we go into suffering, and I've been in suffering, you probably have too. If we go into that suffering, we're like, wow, this really sucks. And then ideally we have it in ourselves to go, wait a second, I don't have to do this anymore. And we pull ourselves out back into, like you talk about, a better response where it's like, well, hold on a second, I'm going to do something valuable with this. I mean, this is not a cancer story, but this Coffee with Humans thing, the fact that you're even here came about at the beginning of COVID. I had gone through some relational changes, and I was in whining and moaning, and also I was looking across friends on LinkedIn and people that I knew who were no longer, some people had no longer had jobs, and people weren't going to the workplace and all that stuff. And there was a sense of just serious disconnection and despair for a lot of people. And I thought, well, that's nonsense. I'm not going to go into despair. I've played in those waters before. Don't care to go back. I'm going to do something that makes it easy to connect and bring some sort of value to my little corner of the world. And so I put one post out on LinkedIn and said, if you want to have coffee with me, I'll have coffee with you. The only rule is no sales calls. And it just rolled out of my tongue. Yeah, the only rule is no sales calls, right? And like 4 or 5 people, boom, automatically immediately took me up on those offers. I recorded them. They were at Zoom. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to just live stream this thing. And so after I did about 70 recorded calls, calling it Coffee with Humans with very little branding or anything, I was like, this thing's going to be live streamed. Why? Because, back to your previous point, we don't just have conversations. And what if we did and then invited the world to it and made it so stupid easy that you just click a button and boom, you can be connected. Furthermore, and this is just my heartbeat, I'm convinced that if we intend, when we get together, let's say in this space, to better ourselves and the world, we have the ability, we have the responsibility, we have authority to do that. And so we're going to use this time for that, and it will always work. There's never a time where it's not going to just be where we're not going to come out better for this experience. And again, by offering it to the world, make anybody or offer anybody the opportunity to change and grow. And that's where I used kind of my, like, wait a second, I could go into depression and despair, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something that I know how to do, which is simply the tech and creation of this stuff and connection and talking with people.
Yeah, I mean, you basically embraced the suck, for lack of a better quote, and turned that around and used it for something positive. And I always love, what can I learn? What can I learn from you? What can you learn from me? What can I learn from my neighbor? We all have, I talked about a book I wrote later. We all have a book inside of us. It's there. It's not something you need to create. Our lives are pretty interesting and pretty unique. And I don't care who you are. I don't care, if you're the janitor at the school or the guy that runs the school. I can learn something from you. And that's what I always try to do. What can I learn? What did I learn today that I didn't know yesterday? And that's going to make me a better person. Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, you mentioned you've got a daughter. You're married. Okay.
Yes. 28 years last weekend.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Your website is motivationalcheck.com. I'm going to put up on the screen here for our viewers and listeners. You have this drive in you to add value to other people. Do you become annoying at home by constantly because I'm guessing I'm gathering from your personality that you're just like on fire. Do you become annoying because maybe you're burning too hot?
No, because
Okay.
I'm not the person to ask you. You should let me go get that.
That's totally true. That's true. This is a totally unfair question, and it's a self-serving question. Just totally self-serving. Just so you know, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot. I'm gathering research.
I don't think I'm annoying. I don't. I do this on podcasts. I don't. I'm not one of these guys that walk around. Why is there air? Well, there's air. I mean, it's
Okay.
it's just something that I have a choice. I can be miserable. You mentioned my daughter. My daughter got married a couple weekends ago, and my family was in town from Chicago, and we were talking about why have I lasted 9 years? I'm on a clinical trial drug I've been on it for a year. 7 people started on it. I'm the last person standing, and that's a very weird feeling to know that everybody else is either dead or it didn't work for them and they're on to something else. And I am this last person. So I go for a whole week of treatment. I just did that last week. And then I have 2 weeks off. And that's my life. And a week of treatment, 2 weeks off, week of treatment, 2 weeks. So during that 2-week period where I'm supposed to be healing, and I become annoying in this regard because my wife says 2 podcasts a day, that's all you can do. You need to heal. You need to rest. I'm like, plenty of rest when I'm dead. You know what? Plenty of rest there. This energizes me. This gives me an opportunity to have a purpose. And without it, I don't know if I'd still be here because, sitting around and watching Netflix all day doesn't really do it for me. This does it.
Oh my God. I love the fact that you said that this gives you a purpose. It is so critical. I know for my own life, there are times when I've sort of wandered purposelessly, right? And the malaise that just can settle into your soul. You're just like, ugh, is there a point? What should I do? Highly capable, done a lot of stuff, and yet all of a sudden just be like, nah, you know what? It just probably isn't worth doing that great. What's the point anyhow? And probably, for you, it seems that you've derived this energy, and like you say, now that you've sort of found your purpose, especially in the situation that you're in, and then be able to see other people develop their purposes, it's got to be energizing all around. And I believe we're holistic beings. I don't think we can separate this idea that, our mind, our soul, our body are somehow like these disconnected things. And, and the body just does its thing over there, disconnected from our brains. It's not true. So if you find the purpose in your soul, it is expressed in your body, and it's a healthier soul, healthier mind will make a healthier body. That's been proven time and time again.
Yeah. I remember back when I graduated from college, my dad was diagnosed with end-stage breast cancer. I know it sounds like my entire life has been cancer. It really hasn't. I've had a great life, done a lot of good things. But I remember, end-stage breast cancer back in the 1980s, no idea what to do with it. It was really just kind of coming on. And they pretty much told him to go home and die. And he lived for 3.5 years. And I always kind of tucked this away in the back of my brain. And I think the reason he did was because he had a purpose. He was in real estate. He went to work up to 2 weeks before he died. And here he was given this death sentence 3.5 years ago. If he hadn't had that purpose, I really believe he would not have lasted that long. But he did. And I kind of like, interesting, tuck that away. Someday this is going to be you. Well, that someday is now. And just like you said, this gives me a purpose. This gives me an opportunity to help other people. And if you and if this conversation today makes a difference in one person's life, today's been a good day.
Right. Totally. Yeah. The impact that we can have for another person is profound. And then the impact that person has to all of their people. And so we carry around great power. I think every moment,
like throwing a stone
power
in the lake. Yeah, it's like throwing the stone in the lake and the ripple effect that goes out. You're the stone, but you have an impact on all those people that you touch who you don't even know. I mean, I had a nurse recently during my therapy, a young woman, probably about 25. She said, you know, when I first met her, she was in training. She was already a nurse, but she was in training on the unit I was in. And several months later, she was like, I want to tell you a story, but I'm really uncomfortable. I can just tell me. And so she said, you know, when I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I'd had a good friend of mine die, and I was in a really dark place. I was going to quit nursing. I talked to my mom and dad. I was going to quit nursing and go to work for Amazon. And she said, then I met you and I heard your story and I see what you go through every day while you're here. And I knew I was in the right place. Now, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that my life had an impact on her in that way. Who's out there, you know, for all the people that are listening, who's out there that you have no idea they want to be like you? They want to emulate the things that you're doing right, that you're doing good in this world. You know, we tend to think with it, you know, the world is all about us. It's not about us. It's about us collectively. It's not about us individually.
Totally. The opportunity to give. I'm arguing with my 15-year-old daughter. Do as much of an argument as can have with a 15-year-old daughter about, you know, making her do stuff, because I do feed her, so she can't argue too much. But you know, so I have her do. She'll hate that I told you this, probably. Whatever. I have her go to church on Sundays when I have her and have her do slides. Just click buttons and stuff, just to serve other people, right? So that she would get off of TikTok or whatever, you know, whatever thing she's on constantly. She recently was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I was like, not sure that that's true, but I hear you. And I said, I think it's really good for your mental health and your soul to serve other people. She's, well, I'm really busy and I'm really going to focus on myself and all this other stuff. And I was like, it is, it's really good to just not focus on yourself for part of the week. And I said, you have plenty of time to do all the rest of your stuff. So that I take this little exchange, and I texted my previous wife and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? Are we on the same page that she should continue this? And I got a text back, yeah, I think she really should. But, you know, since you have her, it's up to you now. So I wrote my daughter back, and I was like, first of all, Mom and I are on the same page on this. So looks like this is going to happen. She's like, okay, whatever. And I was like, and then she said something else. And I said, I'm not having this discussion via text. I'll talk to you in person, but you have to serve other people. You cannot just sit there and be like, it's all about me. I'm going to consume without giving something back and seeing the fact that you have an impact to make in the world. If we don't teach our children how they make an impact in the world, how are they ever going to learn? And what kind of a world is it if we are all walking around selfish little monsters, you know, and never serving anyone unless what we're going to get something out of it? Just I think that I'm happy. Perhaps I'm happy for the lessons when we are required to serve other people, and because sometimes I think I probably would be resistant to that too. I'd be like me. I mean, shit, probably 80% of my day is me anyhow, even when I think it's not.
Well, you know, that's true. You know, when you were telling me that story, I was thinking of kind of my own story. You can't tell this by looking at me, but I'm 6'8" tall, and I played college basketball at the Citadel down in Charleston, South Carolina. But our daughter, you mentioned our daughter got my height. So our daughter is 6'2" and has an NBA 3-point shot. And so she was being recruited by schools to come and play college for them. She chose to go to the United States Air Force Academy. And I remember when she made that decision, I told her, I said, okay, now the other coaches who have been in on you, you're going to need to contact them and let them know that you've made the decision you're going to the Air Force Academy. She's like, I'll send them a text. I'm like, oh, no, you won't. This has been, and when I tried to get her, and I think you and I are kind of on the same page with this, maybe different words, this is about relationships. You know, this conversation is about a relationship. the recruiting process was about developing a relationship with, the head coach, assistant coaches. People came to see you. We went to dinner with them. We went on college visits. We did all that kind of stuff. And now you're going to send them a text? How impersonal. The problem is she didn't know how to handle it. It was like,
Right.
I don't know what to do. We literally role played getting on the phone and, calling and going through that process. And I loved it because this was great. And I think she learned another great lesson. There were some coaches from lesser schools, academically lesser schools, athletically, basketball wise and stuff like that, that kind of yelled at her. They were like, "What do you mean you're not coming to play?" And it's kind of like, and I asked her later, I said, "Well, what did you learn from that?" And I don't know. Well, did you learn that maybe that person didn't have your best interest in mind? That maybe it was all about what you could do for them, as opposed to maybe what you could do for each. I can get you a great education. You can help me keep my job as a basketball coach. I mean, again, think about that. It's in a relationship as opposed to here's a text, boom, it's gone. That's not a relationship. That's just sending something electronically.
Totally. And there's so much, I mean, not only is there the technical aspects of all the communication that's lost via text, 70% of our communication or something like that is nonverbal, our inflection, our tone, our facial expressions. And we lose all of that when we just send a text. And to your point, the putting people in a space where they learn to have relationships is so critically important. And it is, I think, lost a lot in our society today, particularly in close relationships. Like, my daughter, where she's like texting me about something, which is actually life lesson stuff. Like, are you gonna exist for yourself, or are you gonna exist for other people? I mean, it's a life lesson as far as I'm concerned. And we have a disagreement, so it could become emotionally charged. And I've refused to go beyond. I will have the rest of this conversation in person with you, and shut that down. I did a TikTok, and I do some things on TikTok for whatever reason. I started 2 months ago and thought, I'm just going to try and give back to the world instead of keeping all the thoughts in my head. And so I did this TikTok about communication, that when you're in a situation where it could be, it's not just a transactional text, right? Where you're in a conversation with a person, send back a voice memo. If you have to have a text, if a person's not going to get together with you face to face, send back a voice memo and speak the words with your voice, because they'll hear your smile. They'll know instead of like, oh my gosh, is he upset with me? They'll hear your smile. They'll take away your gracious energy, that you're not being unkind, even though you're being direct. And I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we don't take those opportunities to truly connect with all of our connection energy, right? Even being in the same space. I mean, there's a different energy that is evoked when we come into a space with a person. You don't have to say a word, and you can feel the energy. We are so interconnected, which goes back to what you're talking about before. This idea of your purpose has worked its way out probably in your body, and maybe that's why you're still around. And that was something that you learned forever ago, from your dad. And now you're taking that into, giving back to your daughter and saying, okay, well, get yourself in the space, and you'll learn a lot by having a real honest relationship and more full communication, which will help you make better decisions. And it will foster relationships that you just cannot have when we strip away all of who we are as people, or 70% of who we are as people. It's crazy that we allow ourselves to do this. I allow myself to do this, and I have to fight it sometimes. Like, what are you doing, Jace? Get on the damn phone. I used to have to pick up a phone.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the jobs that I had in my life was I was a hostage negotiator for a police SWAT team.
Yeah, you said that. Tell me more.
As a policeman, 99.9% of what you do is face-to-face with another human being, whether you stop somebody to give them a traffic ticket, or whether you get called on a run to somebody's house for a domestic, whatever it is, it's face-to-face. So you have visual clues in addition to the audio, what people are saying and stuff like that. If you're talking to somebody and they're kind of like, looking around, it's like, well, maybe they're looking to run from you or escape from you, something like that. Or, if they're balling up their fists, maybe they want to fight you. And you can do something about that. You can see that and you're like, okay, I can sit you down, I can handcuff you, I can put you in my car, whatever's appropriate for why you're there initially. But as a negotiator, we weren't with the person. They could be blocks away and we're on the phone, or we could be negotiating through a door or, something like that. And you had to get good at figuring out what was going on based on what people were saying, what they weren't saying, and how they were saying it. And, a lot of people like, well, you talk that person out. Not really. What we really did was we listened that person out. We let them, there were times when, let's face it, if you're talking to me, you're probably having the worst day of your life. Your house is surrounded by the police and you're talking to a policeman who's a negotiator. And here I am trying to figure things out. And a lot of times it was like, I'm not sure, but I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. And if you're wrong, they're going to let you know, no, idiot, that's not what I'm talking about. Your problem's over here. But I've also negotiated with people that literally I spent 2 hours talking about something over here when the real problem was over here and we hadn't even come to that. But they needed to burn off some of that emotional energy before they could rationally start thinking that, what's in the best interest for me. And about 90% of the time we got the person out, or we got the person out with the hostage, whatever it was, never lost a hostage. But there was about 10% of the time where the person decided, no, I don't want to come out. This is it for me, and chose to end their life. And that's always tragic, because I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're some crackhead or whatever you are. Yeah. Somewhere somebody loves you, and you matter to somebody else. So, it was always tragic, but I never lost any sleep over it, because let's be honest, you're going to bring me in. It would be like, you coming into my life here and you have no idea what's going on with my life, something that may have been festering for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and it all came to a head tonight, and now I'm supposed to fix it. I'll do the best I can, but bottom line is, it's your decision how this ends tonight.
This gets into a really good, again, self-serving topic. I always try to learn, because I feel so inept sometimes. Familiar with the principles of coaching, where the answer is within you, you are just not yet aware of it yet, and the opportunity is to ask good questions to get better answers. And we, as individuals, as humans, are extraordinarily bad answer or question askers, particularly of ourselves. And then when we get into interpersonal relationships, whether it's a hostage negotiation or whether it feels like a hostage negotiation with a significant other or something like that,
or your 15-year-old daughter,
or your 15-year-old daughter, right? The root of why these things get all bound up is pretty much the same. It's like there's emotions in there. We're not even sure what they are. We don't want to tell you, even if we did know what they were. And we don't want to look at them either. And so we're resistant to even seeing these things. We're not going to be vulnerable. We're not going to be open. We're scared. We got all these things. And then they work their way out through whatever kind of moral filtering mechanism we had. Like if we grew up like, I'm never doing this kind of stuff, I got hard boundaries and that type of stuff, well, we're probably not going to go take hostages. But we might kind of just become, recalcitrant, and I'm just going to be a control freak or something like that. It'd be difficult to be around, or funnel our noses into work or something like that. But we get into these interpersonal relationships where somebody needs to express something and the other person is resistant maybe to hearing it because they want to express their thing too. It's a real skill to be so open and ask questions, to be able to draw out what the person does not want to say, because they might not even be aware of it either. And yet it's as a person who sees it, like all of a sudden I feel like when you see it, you sort of become responsible for it. Like, you're thinking, okay, well, I'm a hostage negotiator. Well, it's up to you to ask the questions. There's nobody else in the room. And so you need to become very skilled at that. Okay. So in our interpersonal relationships, becoming very skilled at asking a question and quieting maybe our own selves for a moment, and how we want to, how we want to like rush in there and like, I could take you now, pull back a little bit and say, okay, well, let's see how this plays out. Here's a question, here's a question, here's a question, draw, and allow that person to, like you talked about, to express the stuff. And it kind of untangles the wires. And all of a sudden the person's thought process becomes more clear. And like you said before, all of a sudden we're moving on the map to a place we did not start at. And it's really because it was all tangled up in a person's mind and actually probably in their heart someplace that they could not figure a way out. They just didn't have the skills for it. I think it's a fascinating topic, because I believe that, back to society relationships, our relationships suffer because of our inability to untangle our own wires, and we'll be really bad because we're really bad at helping another person. I don't know, listening to them untangle their wires and coaching them to untangle their wires. I know that's a totally disconnected and weird thought, but how does that resonate with you?
So let me give you one word, and I think this applies to what I do what I did as a hostage negotiator. This applies to the relationship with your daughter. This applies to the relationship with your wife, and that word is trust. If they trust you, if you get to a point, and that's that that trust is earned. It's not just given. You're a hostage negotiator. I trust you. You're a cop. I don't trust you. And trust is incredible. I mean, I literally had people who were like, okay, I'll come out, but I don't want to go to jail. Well, when you come out, you're going to jail. I mean, and you would tell them that. You would be honest with them. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but when you do come out, you are going to jail. But then you would try to deflect the conversation away from that into something more positive. And the reason we did that is not only it was the right thing to do, but it was very plausible, and it did happen. I was a hostage negotiator for almost 4 years. That 2 years from now, I'm going to be right back negotiating with this exact same person again, maybe on the same topic, maybe on something different. And if they say, hey, wait a minute, 2 years ago you negotiated with me and you lied to me, you're done. You can't negotiate. You got to bring another negotiator in and try to develop that trust again. So I mean, trust is so important in all our lives. If Jason, if I don't trust you, I'm not going to divulge anything, that's close to me or that might hurt me. But if I do trust you, if I come to over the course of a couple hours to say, hey, Jason's a good guy, he's doing his job, but yeah, I think he really cares how this ends up and he cares about me. Okay, now I can start spewing forth, 2 hours over here. Now we can move over here to the real reason that we're actually here tonight. So I think trust is a huge part in any relationship that we have. And again, I think that trust is earned. It's not given.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you brought that word trust out. And I believe I've had this experience with people that some people don't trust themselves. And I think a lot of us don't. I mean, there are times, for me, probably I don't necessarily trust myself. I'm like, is that really what I want to do? Is that really good for me? I don't know. And it's really comforting. It's really comforting when another person will instill trust, like will say, hey, I trust you. There was a time when this friend of mine called me up, and he's the type of friend who only calls me up when he wants something. And so I just it's just like par for the course. I wasn't angry about it. I was like, okay, what do you need? Now it's not just like, hey, good to hear from you. It's like, what do you need? And he says, well, here's what's going on. I've lost my business and I've lost my relationship, and I might be being sued by my previous company and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oof, wow. Now I had learned to hold space with some stuff, people with stuff, and just be able to go, okay, well, let's sit here and talk this through, and I was like, okay, that's a lot. Well, I can tell you it's going to get better. We'll figure out a way through this. I'll walk the journey with you. And And I said, here's the first thing we're going to do, and here's the second thing we're going to do. Now let's go do those things, and then we'll talk further. And it gave him a lot of comfort. And at the end of this conversation, he said, Jason, I just want to tell you, you're one of the people I trust most in this world. And I was like, oh, and I got to, you know what hit me? I was like, how am I not living in a trustworthy manner? If there's another person who's looking at me going, I trust you implicitly, I'm just like, okay, am I trustworthy? Am I living in a trustworthy manner? And it actually set me straight on a handful of things, some very important things in my life. And I was like, okay, I gotta like, get your act together, dude. Integrity, top to bottom, from your soul to your fingertips. Get your act together. If somebody else is going to say they trust you, you might as well, you better start picking up the pace. And so I feel like trust given also inspires, it inspires someone to want to earn trust. I mean, it's like a reciprocal arrangement that I'm going to trust you. I think it's Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, he's got a bunch of YouTube stuff out there and all sorts. You're probably familiar with him. And he talked about trust. He says, you know, most people trust naively. And he says, and then they get burned. And he says, and then sometimes it's really easy to become resentful and stop trusting. He says, but we trust because we're courageous. Because we are going to put ourselves out there and trust you, knowing that you might actually not actually treat that very well. You might actually burn me, but I'm going to trust because I'm courageous, because it's the right thing to do. And it's so key, you know, back to this idea, you underscore the word trust for relationships. It's so key to put the trust out there, because if you want to actually have a relationship, somebody's got to move first. And people are resistant. I'm resistant to being open and vulnerable and all these things, right? And I'm more open, vulnerable, and than I've ever been in my entire life, I think. But it was hard earned, and it was scary. And walking into those waters and saying, you know what, I'm just gonna do this because it's the right thing to do. Trusting that if it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do, and the right results will come from it, regardless of what those things might look like. Being able to step in the waters of trust first, I think, is a key. It's a huge key that stands out for me from what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it does. And the great book that I read a while ago, you may have read it. It's been out for a while. It's called Legacy, and it's written by a man by the name of James Kerr. And it's about the New Zealand national rugby team, who by all accounts is the most successful sports franchise of any sport, of any country, of any time, period. And I read this book, and I couldn't put it down. I took like 4 pages of notes. And you would think that this great sports team, they're called the All Blacks because their uniforms are all black. That was pretty brilliant there. And what they, you know, I'm like, okay, give me something good here. What, you know, when you bring somebody onto your team, what would you think? You would think, okay, we bring somebody on who's technically competent. They're technically competent, and I don't know anything about rugby. So at whatever, you know, they're looking for on their team where they have a deficiency. But that's not what they do. They hire for 2 things. 1 is character, and 2 is humility. And, you know, I mean, they talk about how at the end of the game, you know, when everybody's showered and, you know, the locker room's a mess, the captains go around and police the locker room. The locker room would be in better shape than when they came to it before the match. And I just, you know, if you think about trust and you think about, well, if people are going to trust you, you have to be a person. You talked about integrity, character. You know, I think those words are kind of interchangeable in a way. You have to be a person of good character. And the other thing is you don't have to have all the answers. It's okay not to know what to do, because the way they look at it is you may not know what to do, but collectively together, again, going back to relationships, our relationship as a team will figure out what to do. So it's okay to be humble. It's okay to say, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go from here. But as you say, I'll be the first person willing to step my foot into that water of trust, and I am a person of character and humility, that leads you, hopefully, to be a person that say, yeah, okay, I'll trust Terry because I mean he's a good guy. I mean he does the right thing, or at least what I think is the right thing to do. So I would certainly encourage, if you haven't read the book, or your listeners, that Legacy, a tremendous book. I mean it's just filled with all kinds of things about how we should live our life, and things that you would not think that. I remember back, John Wooden was a coach at UCLA when I was growing up, and I remember he was given an interview one day, and I'm here. I am this great tactician. I mean, the guy won 7 NCAA championships in a row. I'm looking for great information, and somebody asked him, like, "What's the most important thing in any relationship or your teams or anything like that?" And I'm looking for, and he says one word: love. Love is the most important thing. Here's this great coach. Coach, give me something. And he did. He gave me the best thing in the world: love. If I love you, if you love me, if we love other people, we're more willing to trust. We're more willing to put ourselves out there. And we're also probably people of character and humility.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like you said, if I love me, and I think there's something in that. I think there's a quote I heard. It went something like, well, I don't know. The principle of it was basically you can't love another person more than you love yourself. And and that's like safety, right? Like I can't create more safety than I feel for myself. Like if I think that you could destroy me, I will defend myself, even when I think I'm not defending myself. And if I think that it's okay, like you can't destroy me, like I'll trust you because if you do me wrong, I'm fine. Then I can trust you. But if I think you could take me and then I won't be okay, then I withhold automatically, even subconsciously, something from you so as to protect. And I believe that protectionist mentality leads to disconnection. I had a coach once who said something like, the conversation you're unwilling to have is controlling your relationships. And it's like, oh snap, so true. Let's dance around this thing and not point it out, because nobody wants to see what happens if we shine a light on that. And so we will disconnect in that area because we're simply unwilling to talk about it. And the idea of coach, how could you have a team if people aren't willing to call each other out of love and character and say, listen, the way you treated me out there, that wasn't great. But I think I don't think that's how you want to treat me. And so let's talk about this. Or, hey, you didn't come to practice, and we're all suffering for that. Or listen, I'm sorry I didn't come to practice because I was out drunk last night, and I let you guys down. If we can't have those kind of conversations, we can't create trust, and we can't restore it when it becomes broken or cracked. And it's simply a process of life and relationships to be able to get in that habit and learn the process of restoration, I think, in those circumstances.
It is. And if you love yourself enough, you're willing to be vulnerable. And I certainly, all the years I was a policeman, I've been called a lot of names, many of which I couldn't repeat here, otherwise you'd be out the air. But those names only hurt if I internalize them. I mean, it's like so many young kids that get either bullied in person or cyber bullied and stuff like that. I get it. You want to be part of the group. You want to be part of the in group and that. But you know what? If somebody's sending you a message that is negative, that's trying to hurt you, first of all, the only way it hurts is if you own it. So don't own it. It's like, you're a jerk. Okay, that's your opinion. I don't think I'm a jerk. I think I'm a person of integrity and character. But you know what you think I am? That's fine. You want to throw it my way? Great. It only sticks if I allow it to stick. And if you don't allow that, I always say, Jason, if I never knew you, but I knew the 5 people you hung around with the most, I could tell you all about you. And why are you going to hang around people, even if you want to be in the in group? Why would you hang around people that aren't going to care about you, that want what's best for you, that want to uplift you, why would you hang around those people? Find people in your life that care about you. But again, caring about you means being willing to say, like you just said, hey, knucklehead, you didn't show up for practice today. That's not acceptable on our team. You've got to be willing to confront and say those things without like, oh, you know what? Jason said that to me. I'm never going to talk to him again. He's a goof. I don't like him anymore. No, Jason was being honest because that honesty needed to happen. And again, all that comes out of, do you love yourself enough? And do you love other people enough?
Yeah. So in hostage negotiation, how much of these principles are at play? Because it's not a transaction. You're dealing with a person on the other end, and I think there's somebody said there. I can't remember where this was, where this is from. This is forever ago. Something like, on a whole, people are very predictable, on average. Like we can predict. Otherwise, there wouldn't be science about what pricing should be and how to plan for traffic. On a whole, people are very predictable. As an individual, though, very unpredictable. So how do you apply all these principles down to an individual? And whether you want to talk about it from a hostage negotiation or not, or maybe finding a purpose. I mean, the principles are the same, different circumstances, I would think.
Yeah, we trained a lot as negotiators. We had a psychologist that we worked with. We went through a lot of different scenarios. I'll never forget when I first got on the team, and they're like, okay, barricaded person, hostage inside, guy's got a gun, he's holding the person hostage. And the hostage the whole time is like, help me. They're screaming in the background. And I spent the first half hour talking to the hostage. And they were like, no, that's not the problem. Hostage isn't the problem. The problem is the bad guy. But the hostage was the only one who was communicating with me. So, it was like, oh, okay. I get it. So, for your listeners, if you're ever a hostage, don't think we don't care about you if we're not talking to you. We won't. We'll totally exclude you. We want to keep you out of the equation. We want him to think or her to think that this person, you need to let them go, because you know what? They're just a pain in the neck for you to watch, and they're going to need food or maybe medication or whatever it is. Just let them go, and you can stay in there and we'll talk to you. So I guess I don't know if I have a good answer to your question. I think it's how do we develop these relationships? We have to make ourselves vulnerable. We have to put ourselves out there and want to have those relationships. And you're right. I think so many people have been burned that were like, no, it's all about me. It's all about me. I don't care about that. But we're not designed to be solitary creatures. We're designed to be together, to be part of things. And, that's one thing I learned about playing team sports all the way up through college. If I didn't do my job, not only do I let myself down, I let my teammates down, I let my coaches down, let my parents down, my fans down, etc. And being part of this clinical trial that I'm on, this is bigger than me. And I think that's what we have to look at life as things and people being bigger than you. It's not just about you. It's something bigger than you. And I know this clinical trial probably isn't going to save my life, but maybe it's going to save the life of somebody 5 years from now or 10 years from now, who I'll probably be dead when it happens, but I still will have an impact. My life will have had an impact on that person who I don't even know. I'm not even around anymore, but my life will have an impact. What if you lived your life that way? Again, going back to that story that the nurse told me. What if there are people out there that want to be like Jason, that want to be like Terry? You don't know who those people are, but that's what they want. So, they're going back to Coach Wooden. He had a great quote, great saying, and it went like this: "Careful person I want to be, a little person follows me. I dare not go astray for fear they may go the same way." So just remember, it's not about you. It's about us collectively.
Wow. I feel like that's a good ending statement. All right. Well, let's wrap that up then, because I think we can't outdo that. People can learn more about you at motivationalcheck.com.
Yeah, motivationalcheck.com. Pretty much my social media sites are there. Access to my book, all kinds of things are there.
And if and so, do you coach? Do you coach people, or what's your work?
I really, I haven't. Mostly, I speak. I
Okay.
kind of consider myself a motivational speaker. I love speaking to young people, especially. I was a high school basketball coach, so yeah, I've coached before, but I really haven't done the coaching aspect. Probably
Mhm.
more like you have.
Interesting, man. I love this conversation. So valuable. Valuable for me personally. I so many pieces I took from this as growth points and you kind of confirmations, right, of things that have worked in the past, and then some tools and tricks to just keep an eye on, because I think it's so easy to get lost. Um, like you talk about, get lost in things that don't matter, and then have conversations about them, which is really not great, and particularly in particularly in relationships or finding one's purpose. Stop looking at the thing that doesn't matter. Do a little, ask a few more questions to get to the root, and you'll probably find your way through that.
Yeah, and just pose everything out of love. Not about it's all about me. No, pose about it's
Yeah.
out of love. It's out of character. It's out of commitment, honesty, all the traits that we know are good. Those are the things that make us who we are. Power, prestige, money, fame, all that stuff. None of that stuff comes with you at the end. The only thing that does is love. So, put as much love back into the world as you can.
All right. Well, on that note, thanks so much for being with me here on Coffee with Humans. It's been great to know you.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.
Well, Coffee with Humans is a live streamed talk show where I meet my guests about 8 minutes before we go live, and then we have a conversation about anything. Today, we talked about finding your purpose. We also talked about hostage negotiation and how to create better relationships. You can catch us periodically on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, and more places, and also on Apple and Google, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, all the podcast places. This has been Coffee with Humans. We'll see you next time. One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls. This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.